Welcome to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Buckle up, because we're diving headfirst into the shifting gears of North American trade, a landscape now jolted by Trump's tariff tornado. As 2025 revved into high gear, Canada threw caution to the wind, rolling out a $214 billion trade masterstroke spanning Asia, Latin America, and Europe. From Indonesia's CEPA slicing tariffs by 90% to fresh bilateral deals that turned heads, Canada's diplomatic engine roared to life, leaving U.S. manufacturers and farmers stalling at the line. So let's peel back the hood on these turbocharged developments and see how Canada's trade pivot could leave America idling at the pit stop. Tariff Tempest, 2025's trade turbulence hits hard. March 2025 saw President Trump slam the brakes on North American trade harmony with a hefty 25% tariff slapped on Canadian steel, aluminum, and most goods. Energy wasn't spared either, hit with a 10% tax. For Canada, whose economy has long been turbocharged by cross-border deals, it was a brutal blow. Exports faltered, foreign investment shifted lanes, and entire supply chains screeched to a halt. Canadian industries, from auto parts makers to food producers, braced for a fender bender of epic proportions. Not to be left in the dust, Canada's response was swift and fierce. A retaliatory 25% tariff on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of U.S. goods, ranging from Kentucky bourbon to high-tech electronics. Prime Minister Mark Carney made it clear, Canada wouldn't be idling while the U.S. played hardball. What had once been a trusted partnership was suddenly in gridlock. According to Statistics Canada's May 2025 figures, the fallout was brutal. An unprecedented 7.1 billion Canadian dollars trade deficit in April, driven by a 15.7% plunge in exports to the U.S. The auto sector took the biggest hit, with vehicle and parts exports skidding nearly 23%. Canada's attempts to sell elsewhere, beyond the U.S., only managed a meager 2.9% gain, revealing just how tied to American demand Canada still is. As factories sputtered and markets reeled, quiet diplomatic efforts shifted into gear in June. Trump and Carney, along with their top trade mechanics, began tinkering under the hood, trying to patch together a trade and security agreement before September. But while that drama played out, Canada was already looking for fresh trade lanes beyond the U.S., which leads us to our next chapter. CEPA with Indonesia, a 2025 trade milestone. The Canada-Indonesia Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, CEPA, officially signed in Jakarta in December 2024, marked a pivotal moment in Canada's Indo-Pacific ambitions. By early 2025, Canada was already broadening its outreach, sending trade missions to Thailand and Cambodia, led by its chief trade commissioner, and expanding infrastructure through Export Development Canada's embassy presence in Bangkok. With CEPA set to come into force in 2026, 2025 has become the year of groundwork and acceleration. The trade agreement will eliminate tariffs on 95% of Canadian exports, covering agriculture, mining, advanced manufacturing, and digital services. In 2024 alone, bilateral trade hit $2.9 billion through October, and 2025 forecasts suggest even stronger momentum as Canadian wheat, potash, and fertilizers gain traction in Indonesia's vast market. Indonesia's robust economic outlook, nearing 5.1% annual growth, and its reserves of tin, nickel, and bauxite align perfectly with Canada's push for EV supply chains and green energy tech. CEPA, reinforced by Canada's $2.3 billion Canadian dollars Indo-Pacific strategy, is no longer just a plan. It's an active gear shift in Canada's trade machine, firmly shifting focus from North America to Asia's fast-moving lanes. But as Canada forged ahead in Asia, the echoes of these trade deals were reverberating loudly in the U.S. economy, putting American industries on edge. Before we dive into the domestic fallout, do us a favor, smash that like button and subscribe to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit. Your support helps us keep those gears turning and bring you the latest vehicle updates and trade insights. Now let's downshift into the next chapter and see how America's own trade landscape is navigating this rocky road. America's trade potholes, Economic fallout. Back in the US, these turbocharged tariffs left American industries stuck in the slow lane. From Michigan's auto assembly lines to Kentucky's bourbon barrels, the impact was immediate. Rising costs, factory shutdowns, and empty store shelves left consumers reeling. The auto sector took a direct hit. New tariffs piled thousands of dollars onto each vehicle's sticker price, leaving automakers fuming and drivers sweating the costs. Farmers, too, were stuck in the gears, with Canadian taxes choking wheat and citrus exports. As American consumers watched grocery bills climb and trade groups called for recalibration, compromise seemed like a rusty old carburetor. No one wanted to touch it. But under the hood, the message was clear. Trade tensions were no longer a fleeting misfire. They'd become a structural breakdown. So, as the US economy ground to a halt, Canada was already shifting up a gear and laying new foundations in global markets. Building global bridges, Canada's strategic multilateral charge. As Trump's tariff storm brewed, Canada was busy laying down fresh tarmac on the global trade superhighway. In early June 2025, it finalized a $214 billion multi-sector trade package. This was no piecemeal patch-up. This was a high-octane expansion across Asia, Latin America, and Europe, forging new deals in critical minerals, green energy, and high-tech manufacturing. Canada didn't just stumble upon these alliances, it leveraged existing relationships with heavyweights like the EU, Japan, India, and Australia. By pitching itself as the safe bet, Canada attracted billions in fresh foreign investments, especially as US policies sputtered in a cloud of uncertainty. April's deficit numbers told the tale. While the US market veered off course, Canadian exports to Asia and Latin America picked up serious speed. Big players, especially in battery and critical mineral sectors, began to bet on Canada's stable regulatory framework and more predictable trade environment. But with Canada cruising ahead, the real question was, could the US find a way back onto the track? The road ahead, reset, or rivalry? With Canada's global game plan roaring ahead, the US finds itself at a critical intersection. Some American industries may have gained short-term protection from Trump's tariffs, but the long-term costs are mounting fast. Lost market share, fractured supply chains, and a growing sense of reputational whiplash. Diplomatic backchannels began humming in early June. President Trump and Prime Minister Carney hinted at a possible truce by September, perhaps unlocking Canadian minerals and auto supply deals for the US, while bolstering Canada's security role in the Arctic. But even if a deal is struck, April's trade numbers hint at deeper changes already in motion. Canadian exporters aren't idling, they're revving up in Asia and Latin America, forging a permanent new lane in global trade. Which brings us to the final lap. Where does this road ultimately lead? Verdict: the final lap, North America's new trade circuit. The US-Canada trade clash isn't a finished chapter, it's a living, breathing saga. Canada's bold $214 billion expansion shows how volatility can become opportunity, flipping the script on traditional trade routes. It's more than just diversions, it's a full recalibration of North America's trade and geopolitical power balance. Of course, not everything is an open road for Canada. Some US industries did get temporary protection, but at what price? For America, the next fork in the road is clear: reconnect with global allies or risk ceding its seat at the driver's table. In the meantime, Canada has emerged as the unexpected driver of North America's trade evolution, ready to take the wheel if the US can't keep up. So, what's your take, gearheads? Do you think Canada's $214 billion trade pivot marks a permanent shift in North American power? Will US manufacturers recover, or are they idling while Canada takes the lead? What's next for global supply chains? Realignment or more trade turmoil? Share your thoughts and wrench-turning insights in the comments below. Thanks for watching and keeping those engines humming. Don't forget to subscribe to your ultimate pit stop, Piston Pundit, for all the latest vehicle updates and automotive insights. Stay tuned for the next lap. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.